This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here across from City Hall with none other than Wayne Young, who is here in Toronto representing Bastianich from Friuli in Italy. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing really well, thank you very much.
Now, you have been with the Bastianich dynasty, or dynasty as we sometimes say in the UK, for since about the mid-90s, have you not?
1996.
And previous to that, you were working with the Wine Spectator, organising tastings.
I was the tasting coordinator in New York for about 2 years.
And from working as a sommelier with the family, you've actually ended up working over in Friuli, which is the dream of many sommeliers to escape the floor and end up working at a winery that they love. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that story and how your current position came to be?
Well, I worked with Joe Bastianich at his first restaurant in New York City on 46th Street called Becco, and I did about 2.5 years on the floor there. And I got really tired of working the days where my friends were playing and being off on the days when my friends were working. And it was a pretty high stress situation, so I wanted to change. And I had a very good rapport with Joe, and I let him know that I wanted to do something different, that I wanted to move on, that I was looking for something. He asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I wasn't really sure. And he asked me if I wanted to make wine, and I said I don't know how to make wine. But he said, I just bought this small vineyard in Friuli, and he had always talked to me about how much he loved Friulian wines. So he said, why don't you go do a vintage, work in the cellar, get your hands dirty and see how it's done. And I said, okay, I'll go for 6 months, maybe a year, and I never left, really.
Well, I've always loved the wines that the Vine Agency have brought in from Bastianich, but you were actually integral to the labelling and the naming of those wines, were you not?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I didn't do the basic label design, but I did the names like Vespa and Calabrone and Plus and Adriatico. Those, yeah, and with all modesty, yes, those are my inventions.
And I would love you to tell us a little bit about the underlying philosophy of the winery, why you chose to go for the blends and the varietals that you did.
Well, that was really Joe's goal from the very beginning. I mean, I remember Joe talking to me about Friulian wines and tasting with Joe the great blends of Friuli, things like Vintage Tunina and Terre Alte, and all of these wines that were so important. And Joe and I had actually coined a term together for these because we were talking about the Super Tuscan revolution,
yes,
and
yeah.
how there was this revolution in red wine, but there never really came the same revolution in white wine. So we coined the term Super Whites. Which was kind of a movement there for a while in the late 90s, early 2000s. There was actually a Super Whites tasting that Slow Food had done for a few years. So really the whole idea that Joe wanted to do in Friuli was to create a blended white wine that could stand up to the best white wines in the world. He was convinced that the white wines from Friuli, especially the hillside regions of Colli Orientali, where we are, and Collio, could stay on the table and age alongside the best white Burgundies, your best California Chardonnay. So he really wanted to make a blended wine with a great possibility of longevity in the bottle.
Would you not say that choosing the base of the white blend that you ended up calling Vespa as Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay was quite an odd move for the time? Well,
Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc are very common in the area. A lot of French varietals are planted in the area. After phylloxera wiped out all of the native varietals, the influence of Austria and the French aristocracy, it was much more fashionable to plant French varieties. So a lot of French varieties got planted in Friuli. I think that's one of the sort of unusual and interesting things about Friuli. So Chardonnay and Sauvignon were present. When we decided to make the blend, all of the wines that we had, all of the grapes that we had in the vineyard were considered for the blend, but in the end, what happened was those were the two wines that we thought were best: Chardonnay, Sauvignon, and a little bit of Piccoli, which really sort of tops the whole thing up.
What's the percentage of Piccoli usually in that?
Just about 10%.
And what do you believe that adds to that particular blend?
Piccoli is a grape variety that has a lot of richness, has a lot of honey tones, but it's still quite acidic and fresh, so it adds that extra dimension of ripeness and that acacia honey, without weighing the wine down and without covering up that fresh minerality that we think is so important to the wines from Friuli.
Which other grape varietals do you concentrate upon at Bastianich?
Friulano is a big deal for us.
I still call it Tokai for some reason.
As we all do, but for to be correct, yeah, it is.
Exactly.
We do produce a lot of Friulano. And we love it. We think it's a very important grape variety. We don't normally blend it with anything else. We think it's sort of perfect on its own.
And they're quite old vines that you have of those.
We do have some old vine Friulano. That makes Plus, which is something that's very, very special,
Yes.
that we only make a few thousand bottles of per year. But we do have the fresh Tokai, the base Tokai, which is the Adriatico line, which is out now. And that wine is made from younger vines, that anywhere from 10 to 25-year-old vines.
Now, of course, Friuli is seen as being the premier region for white wines, but you do also make some red wines there.
Yeah, absolutely. We make about 80% white wine and only about 20% red wine. We do make a very, very small amount of Refosco that we save for the Italian market because we don't make a whole lot of it. But the most important red wines are Vesparosso and Calabrone. Calabrone, like Plus, we only make a few thousand bottles per year, but Vesparosso is a blend of Merlot and Refosco and a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc that we really like. And I think that a lot of people are starting to understand that you can make great white wines, but also some great red wines as well.
Now, when it comes to these whites and these reds, you've been in Friuli for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you enjoy your food?
Oh, absolutely. You can tell.
And what kind of dishes, what kind of regional dishes do you enjoy with the Bastianich wines?
That's a good question. I think with the based wines, I really like the typical salumi from the area. Prosciutto di San Daniele is probably the most important food export from Friuli.
Right, okay.
And that's just a few miles on the other side of Udine, so it's something that's in abundance everywhere. But not just prosciutto, but also other salumi. I remember when I first went to Friuli and somebody offered me salami. And when I thought of salami, I always thought of Hormel salami, which I hated. And then I was like, I really don't eat salami. And they were like, but wait a second, you never had our salami. And then I ate that salami, and it was a revelation. So with the base wines, with the fresh white wines, with the fattiness and the richness of those types of things, I love that type of thing. One of the really great dishes from Friuli is frico, which is sort of a melted Montasio cheese patty that's sometimes made with potato, sometimes not, depending upon the tradition that you run into. And that's really great with the red wines or the bigger white wines like Vespa Bianco, Vespa Rosso.
Where do you feel the wines of Friuli fit on the world stage right now? Let me ask that question one more time. Where do you feel the wines of Friuli, particularly the white wines, of course, sit on the world stage right now? How are they accepted in the different markets you visit?
I think there's a growing appreciation for those wines. I think the inherent difficulty in white wine is that often white wine is seen as sort of a lesser commodity than red wine. Red wines are seen as important wines, wines that you buy and age, wines that have a particular amount of complexity, wines that you pay more for. So one of the problems with white wine in general, and Friuli wines in particular, is that once you start getting into the more important levels of wine, like Vespa Bianco, that you're talking about bottles that aren't $15 or $17 a bottle, you really start to run into a little bit of resistance there about price. But what we're trying to communicate is that these are white wines that should be on the world stage with the best white wines of France, with the best white wines of Germany, with the best white wines of California, wherever you want to put them. And that's the fight that we're always doing. The problem being, Friuli only makes about 2% of all of Italy's wines in general, and Colli Orientali and Collio together, which are the two hillside regions, only make 2% of all of Friuli's wines. So we don't have a really big critical mass of product to get out there. So it's a constant education. It's a constant bringing the wines to the people. But once they get the wines in their mouth and they taste how great they are, then it becomes much easier.
Well, we look forward to tasting through your range of wines this afternoon at the Vine Tasting.
Yes.
And thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today.
Yeah, pleasure is mine.
Bye for now.